What if AI created real value for your business, for your people, for you? What if you were truly empowered to cut your lead times in half, empowered to prepare twice as many quotes with the same resources, empowered to enter new markets at 1/3 the cost? Epicor Prism is made with and for makers, movers, and sellers, and it is making business better for Madsen Custom Cabinets, who says, "We're excited for Epicor Prism to help take off the load of mundane tasks so our staff can focus on the stuff that's producing value." What can Epicor Prism do for you? Take a look. The user asks Epicor Prism, "Get me a list of RMAs." Instantly, Epicor Prism processes the request and displays an interactive grid of open return merchandise authorizations. The user can easily sort, filter, and interact with the data directly from the grid view. The user spots a metric on the screen and asks Epicor Prism, "What % of receipts are late?" Epicor Prism instantly interprets the data and provides a clear response, giving the percentage directly in the chat. Rather than creating a new metric or pulling out a calculator, users can simply ask a question and get the answer immediately. In a world powered by Epicor Prism, every day is efficient. Every day is full of opportunity. Every day is easier with Epicor.
All right, hello and welcome to day 2 of our 3-day webinar series. This is a brand new event from Metal Forming Magazine and the Precision Metal Forming Association, our first ever Metal Fabrication Strategy Summit. I'm Brad Kubin. I'm the editorial director of Metal Forming Magazine, which is a publication of PMA, and I'm very pleased and excited to welcome you this morning. This event is unlike any other that we've produced in the past. While we do have expert keynotes on the agenda, the main event, if you will, really is a series of 6 panel discussions, which started yesterday with our first 2 panel discussions. Our panels are made up of experts from the metal fabrication industry, speaking with us on the panels on a variety of critical topics. So before we get started on today's agenda, just a few notes about today's meeting session. It is being recorded for archiving. So the recorded event will be posted to our website within the next few days. We'll let you know via email when the recordings are available to view online, and then you'll be able to watch them again, share them with others at your company. Also, all of you are in listen-only mode, which means that our speakers and other listeners will not be able to hear any audio from your site during the program. But you can, of course, communicate with us throughout the program by submitting any questions or comments using the Q&A. Use the Q&A link located on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll address any questions for our speakers as time allows at the end of the presentation. And please, we do want you to ask questions of our panelists and of our keynote speaker. We want this to be as interactive as possible. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to interact with our speakers. All right, so without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure now to welcome this morning's keynote speaker, which really will help set the table for the conversations to follow in our 2 panel sessions. So our speaker is Jeff Puma. Jeff is the content director for the Manufacturing Leadership Council at NAM. Jeff is responsible for helping the manufacturing community understand digital transformation trends by creating programming, editing the Leadership Council's Manufacturing Leadership Journal, and analyzing survey data. So his talk this morning is called The Now and Next of Manufacturing 4.0 and AI, and he'll be exploring real-world applications of generative and traditional AI, connecting them to foundational requirements for long-term success. And all of this is backed by insights from a recent survey that his organization conducted on industrial digital transformation. So please welcome Jeff.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Brad. Give me 1 second to share my screen so everybody can see my slides here. Great. All right, should be up and sharing now. Brad, can you confirm that everybody can see that?
Looks good. Sounds good.
Awesome. So, thank you again, Brad. Thank you to the PMA for inviting me to be here. I'm really excited to talk about Manufacturing 4.0 and AI, and it's sort of a weird time to be talking about AI. You may have seen a headline that came out in late August that 95% of generative AI pilot projects are failing. And so coming on here and talking about AI and Manufacturing 4.0, in the shadows of that headline, which came out from a study that MIT did, it's a little bit of an interesting time to be talking about these things. But I don't think it's surprising that these pilot projects are failing. And we're going to talk through today some of the foundational items that need to be in place in order for technology to progress and be successful. And then we're going to talk through some of the data that comes out of Manufacturing Leadership Council surveys and some other key points that we've seen from anecdotal evidence, from case studies, and from some other things. So let's talk about some of that failure first. That's the elephant in the room. Let's jump right into that and talk about how technology progresses. And I think to understand how failure leads to success, it's important to kind of have a grounding and a parallel to what we're seeing in AI with what we saw in the consumer world. So I want you to think about a company that rapidly delivers something to you. You go online on your phone, on an app, whatever it might be, and you order something and it's delivered to you. What that thing could be is, it could be food, it could be some kind of commodity, some kind of good that you order. And rapid could be your definition of, is that 2 days? Is it within the hour? Is it instantaneous? But I want you all to have some company in your head that that does this rapid delivery of things. Okay, so some of you may have thought of a company like DoorDash, which launched in 2013, delivers food, or Uber Eats, which came about in 2014, built on the Uber driving platform and ride service platform, but it came about in 2014, or Amazon Prime, which came about in 2014 as well. Of course, Amazon had been around for about 15 years or so before that. But Amazon Prime, their rapid delivery service, didn't launch until 2014. But I'm guessing not a lot of you thought of a company like Webvan, which came about in 1996 and was gone by 2001. Or Cosmo.com, that came about after Webvan, so in 1998, and was gone also in 2001. Now, there were other things happening in 2001 that helped accelerate the failures of Webvan and Cosmo.com. You had 9/11, of course, you had the tech bubble bursting and the fallout that both of those things had for the economy and for investments in these tech products. But I would submit to you that these companies were ahead of their time, and therefore they didn't have the underlying technological, logical foundation that would have allowed them to succeed. Because technology progresses in a logical fashion from A to B to C. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't starts and stops and that there aren't some steps that are bigger and that there aren't some regressions that take place. But for the most part, things have to move from A to B to C with logical underlying foundational elements in place before they can move forward. And if you go from A to C, like a company like Cosmo.com did, or a company like Webvan did that provided great delivery services, but didn't have all of those underlying things, you're destined to fail. And so we're going to talk through what are those things, those underlying conditions that need to be in place. So first off, you need the supporting technology and the technology itself to be in place. You need user conditioning, you need critical mass, and you need a problem or a need. So for a company like DoorDash or Amazon Prime, by the time those came around, there was broadband access, we had smartphones, we had apps, we had all of the things that we needed to be able to access those technologies. When I used Cosmo.com back in 1999, which I actually did use, you would go online, which meant that you had to plug in a modem, a phone line into your computer. You had to hear that hideous crackle of the modem. You had to surf to a website, wait for it to load, do a search, wait for that page to load. It was a very slow process in order to order things. You didn't have broadband. You didn't have smartphones. Apple iPhones weren't invented until 2007. So in 1999, you didn't have any of that technology or the apps. You didn't have user conditioning. By the time that DoorDash and Amazon Prime and Uber Eats came about, you had users who understood that I could put my credit card into a website and trust that it was secure. If there was a problem with my delivery service, there were remedies out there. I was conditioned to understand that those remedies existed. And things like Netflix conditioned us to expect things like that, instantaneous as we ordered them. Meanwhile, you had more people online by 2014 than you did in 1998 or 2001 when Cosmo.com and Webvan and the early movers in the space of consumer delivery technology failed. And there was a problem or a need. We had the pandemic, and the pandemic supercharged these delivery services. For DoorDash, they did 800 and, sorry, jumped ahead there. DoorDash did 800 and some $1 million in revenue in 2019. It was 885 million. Anyone want to guess what they did in 2020 when the pandemic came into play? 2.89 billion. They went up $2 billion in revenue in 1 year as a result of the pandemic. So the pandemic supercharged these things. So you had the technology in place, you had the user conditioning, you had the critical mass, and either problem or need. So you're probably wondering what any of this has to do with AI. I only mentioned AI in the first 30 seconds of this talk, and now we haven't talked about it at all in here. You're probably wondering how I can connect these dots back. Well, I'll tell you that AI is also following this A to B to C progression, and it's taken us a long time to get here, about 70 years. In fact, if you take 1950, when Alan Turing first talked about what we now call modern AI, or 1956, when the term artificial intelligence was actually coined, you're looking at about 70 years. And so what are those underlying conditions that are helping us to avoid a third AI winter? So we've had two AI winters now. AI winters are times when the expectations, the funding, the capabilities of AI fell flat or didn't reach the peaks that we thought it would and didn't deliver the results. But for now, it seems like we're avoiding the third AI winter. And so let's talk about what those underlying foundational elements are that are keeping us away from hitting that third winter. So first off, most manufacturers are telling us that they have a preponderance of data. There's so much data out there. What you're seeing on your screen right now is what DALL-E thinks data looks like. I went in and said, give me an image that shows what data looks like in manufacturing. And it's not very far off. It's messy looking. There's blobs of it. There aren't straight lines. There's a lot of confusion in what it's showing there. And that's sort of what data is like right now for manufacturers. In fact, in our most recent survey that we published in September of 2025, Manufacturing Leadership Council members and those who have taken the survey told us that 33% saw at least a doubling in the data that they are collecting in the past 2 years. And more than 50% expect that number to triple by the year 2030. So there's so much data, and it's only getting worse. What you do with that data, how you contextualize it, how you democratize it, how you make decisions from it, all of that is out there, and it's growing, and it is a huge problem for manufacturers. Meanwhile, the pandemic, just like for those delivery services, the pandemic had huge effects on manufacturing. There were supply chain disruptions. There were geographic changes in where people were living, where they were working. There was turnover. There were people retiring from the workforce. There were generational shifts in manufacturing. that were going on. And those generational shifts actually predated the pandemic. According to this Pew Research Center data, both millennials and Gen Xers had surpassed boomers in the workforce by 2016. So what does that mean? Well, while millennials and Gen Xers aren't necessarily considered digital natives, those who had a phone in their hand from the cradle and even before they could hold a crayon, um, millennials and Gen Xers were online pretty early on in their lives, and they were doing things on computers. So for the fellow Gen Xers like me, you probably had an Apple IIe computer in your classroom, and you were probably trying to avoid getting dysentery on the Oregon Trail. Or there's probably some Gen Xers out there who would be able to continue the cheat code from Contra. If I told you up, up, down, down, left, right, you could complete that cheat code because you were using technology. And yes, it was gamified for the most part for us as Gen Xers, but we were used to it. We could program a VCR clock, for example, and we were used to doing things online from high school on. And so there was this generational shift that was going on in the workforce beyond the disruptions that were taking place from the pandemic. Meanwhile, the things that AI is good at and that digital transformation helps with are things that are important for manufacturing. I'm going to come back and talk a little bit more about what you see on the screen right now, but this is an Amazon fulfillment center in Seattle. And what they're doing with technology there, with AI there, is not dissimilar to what we're seeing in manufacturing facilities. And the things that manufacturing is using AI for is things like plant floor IoT, preventative maintenance, process improvement, quality improvements, planning. All of these things are very important, and AI does a really good job with it. And so there is a need there. When we go back to my four foundational elements, we had more technological support there. We had better networking with 5G. We have the Internet of Things, the industrial Internet of Things as it is for manufacturers. We cloud and edge computing. We had user conditioning. There's not much difference between going into a chatbot like you might use when you're interacting with your cable provider, something that I unfortunately have to do quite a bit. There's not much difference in going in and interacting with that chatbot at the cable provider as there is going into ChatGPT and querying and getting responses and interacting. Similarly, we had traditional AI in manufacturing. We had vision systems and machine learning in place. So people were used to using some AI before generative AI came onto the scene in November of 2022. And we're used to expecting on-demand answers. So you could go into Google, you could do a search query and get something back that you trusted, a link that you might click on. There's not much difference between that and going into ChatGPT or another large language model and putting in a query and getting something back that you're expected to trust. We'll talk a little bit about whether you should trust it in a little bit, but that is some user conditioning that took place. Meanwhile, you had this younger workforce that I mentioned. And again, the data issues in the pandemic were problems that needed to be solved. And so we had all the elements that allowed AI to go from A to B to C in order to get us to where we are. And so where is that? Let's talk through a couple of use cases for AI. And I'm going to put on the screen some key terms and some key AI things. There's 10 up here. We don't have enough time to dive into each of these, but I think these are terms that are worth knowing. We're going to focus on 5. So vision systems, machine learning, physical AI, generative AI, and agentic AI. Why did I pick these? Well, in a survey that the Manufacturing Leadership Council published in June, these were the top things. And they're also the growth areas. So machine learning is seen to be going up in the next 2 years by 27 percentage points, agentic by 18, physical AI by 13. So these are the things that people are starting to play around with and put into their organizations. So how are we seeing these things play out? So I said I'd go back to the Amazon fulfillment center example. This is in Seattle, Washington, or at least right outside of Seattle. We had an opportunity to take a tour group there in summer of 2024. And what I saw just blew me away. So let me tell you what you're seeing in this picture. So over here where that purple circle is, those boxes, those are, widgets or whatever's come in. So there could be like shampoo and uh, PlayStation 5 games and blue jeans and baseball caps. It could be whatever. And this woman who can just barely see at her workstation um, over the desk there, she is taking out and scanning one item out of the box. And she only has to scan one item, and then the computer recognizes it. And what she's doing is then everything else in the box she's putting into these bins. And these bins are on the back of AMRs, so autonomous mobile robots, that are zipping around these bins in that caged area, that fenced in area. And so one of those AMRs zips up to her, and she puts in randomly into any bin that she wants any item that she has, whatever she's just scanned. So let's say it was a box of 15 hats. She might put some into one bin, some into another bin. And in that bin, there may be other things. There already could be shampoo in there or shoes or whatever it might be. And it's random where she's putting them. But there's a camera overhead and it's taking a picture and it knows exactly where she's put every single item and how many items she's put into each bin. So then when Jeff in suburban Chicago goes in and places an order for, um, you know, PlayStation 5 games or blue jeans or sewing needles or whatever it might be, those AMRs zip over to a station where a picker has to decide where the things are in the bin. And the picker sees on the screen, oh, the sewing needles are in bin B12. And he or she can just reach in there and grab them and pull them out. And so they can literally find a needle in a proverbial haystack because the vision system has identified where everything was put without the worker having to manually input where she put everything. So that's a vision system. This is another tour that we did in Kentucky. It's going to start as a vision system example and morph into a machine learning. What you see here is an overhead conveyor system. It's chain link driven. And so they have to do a lot of maintenance on the chains to make sure that they can continually move things around the factory. So what they did was they set up a camera in one spot and it takes a picture of every single chain link as it passes overhead. So it's taking pictures every half a second, let's say. Now they started with a database of, let's say, 100 pictures. And those 100 pictures had brand new chains and broken chains and everything in between. And the computer system, the vision system, is using AI to instantaneously match up what it saw in the picture it just took with that spectrum of brand new to broken. And it's being able to say where the chain is on its life cycle so that they can do preventative maintenance. But where the machine learning comes in is that the system is automatically self-learning and putting these new pictures it's taken into the system. So what started as maybe 100 pictures is now 1,000,000 pictures. And they can pinpoint with more accuracy how much time is left in the lifespan of each chain. Now, the subplot to this story that I really think is fascinating is if you ask the guy in the green shirt there, his name is Mike, if you ask him, how do you know where the chain is? Well, they tell you that they're using sort of old school and new school together. They have put a piece of duct tape around one chain link. And so they know if that chain link with the duct tape comes through at, say, 9:25 and 54 seconds, and the one that needs to be replaced comes through at 9 o'clock and 49 seconds, that they know the distance and time that it takes to get from the duct tape link to the link that needs to be replaced, and they know when they can stop the conveyor system in order to perform that preventative maintenance. So it's not just a vision system, not just machine learning, but that beautiful marriage of new technology and old school, tried and true duct tape technology. But I really love those sorts of examples. Now, if we move on to another example of physical AI, this is where the AI is paired with something in the physical world. So what I'm using as the example is a drone from a company called Nightingale Security. Nightingale Security does drone technology. They've been around for 10 years. They've integrated things like vision systems and machine learning into their drones, LiDAR, a bunch of other things. And what they use these drones for is to either aid first responders or to do security in a warehouse or on a oil field, or to examine hard to reach places in a chemical plant where you might need to be able to see if there's a leak somewhere. And these drones can go out and autonomously fly around and use vision systems to identify what they're seeing. I'm using drones specifically for this example because I mentioned that user conditioning is important for any technology to stick, and users understand drones. If you go back a handful of years to when my daughter was, I want to say about 9 years old, she had a cheapy little drone that she had. And so if a 9-year-old could use a drone and was familiar with drones, then manufacturing leaders can definitely go in and use drones as well. And it's more accessible than a humanoid robot might be. And in fact, the humanoid robot stories that I've been being served for the last several weeks have been things like a robot falling off a stage, or a robot crashing into a mirror, or all kinds of robot fails. And so I think we're a little bit further out from getting humanoid robots into the workplace. We've seen some of those dogs. They're really cool. They're really fascinating. They use vision systems and AI, but they're still not that accessible to people. But a drone can be. Vision systems can be. And so that's why I'm specifically using this example. Now, on the generative AI side of things, I'm going to use a low-hanging fruit example of ChatGPT. There are all kinds of other generative AI tools out there. Some of you may have built your own generative AI tools, or have providers who are coming in and providing those sorts of things to you. But I'm going to use a simple example from generative AI from ChatGPT, because it allows us to see some other things that are important to know. So first off, what I'm using ChatGPT for here is to do some scheduling. I said that I have a 5-day work schedule. I have 5 workers. They have to complete exactly 200 hours, and each of the workers has a different parameters on when they can work, how many hours, how many days, that sort of thing. And so ChatGPT starts going through, doing its calculation, figuring out, okay, worker A, B, and C, D, and E, here's how many hours they can work. It even lays out the work schedule in a really convenient spreadsheet for me and into a chart. But here's the problem. When you actually look at the totals, ChatGPT did the math wrong. It actually told me, even though I said it had to be exactly 200 hours, it actually gave me 208 hours of work. And I use this example, even though it failed, because ChatGPT puts right on their screen that it can make mistakes, and we have to check important information. And I can't highlight this enough. But here's the thing. For me to build that chart alone would have taken me as long as it took for ChatGPT to figure all this out, and for me to go back and do the calculation of how do I get rid of these 8 hours that it's over. So it really got me further along than I expected to be. Now, this highlights something that I think is really important. So Dr. Julie Shaw, she's the head of the Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics at MIT. She's an expert in artificial intelligence and robotics, and she's a former Board of Governors member for the Manufacturing Leadership Council. She's brilliant. And we had her on stage at an event a couple of years ago, and she said, here's what you need to do with generative AI. You need to think about it as a highly creative intern. And so what she's saying is, you wouldn't allow an intern to make executive level decisions. You wouldn't allow an intern to go into the boardroom and present as if it had domain expertise. And so you need to use it for what it is. It's something that can create great ideas and lots of ideas very fast. But you as a human have to have that expertise and that understanding of where it needs to be checked and how it needs to be verified. There was just a story in October about a big four consulting firm that sold a government, so not the US government, but another government, report on something. I can't even remember what the report is about, but the entire report was fabricated and generated by generative AI. It had grammatical errors, it had factual errors, it had spelling errors. And this big four consulting firm charged that government $400,000 for this report. All the things that it cited weren't real. So you have to check things like math, like sources, because ChatGPT, while it's getting better, is still not great at those things. So I always caveat, and I always call this out, that you do need to be mindful of that. So moving on to our fifth case study, we're going to talk about agentic AI. Now, we're right on the cusp of agentic. I'm not seeing a lot of agentic examples out of manufacturing yet. If you have some, I'd love to hear them, because most of our members who are, sort of the leaders in this are just dipping their toe in the water with agentic. But here's an example that one of our members told us they're looking towards implementing. On the left, you see a computer-generated guy named Steve. This picture is totally computer-generated and AI generated, but for our purposes, Steve's real, and he's your best employee, and he's announced he's retiring. And sure, you may have standard work, and you may have knowledge management systems, but Steve does all the little things. And so what you might do before he gets to his last day is follow him around or have him use generative AI to notate and say all the things that he's doing throughout the day, all the little things that make him your best employee. And generative AI will create a catalog of everything he does. Now, it becomes agentic when you then allow the AI to make decisions based on what real life Steve did. So digital Steve, this little computer bluey guy on the right, he's digital Steve. And you allowed Steve to share his knowledge, all of his wisdom, and then agentic Steve, so digital Steve, is then making the decisions and going forward with the knowledge as if it is still Steve. So what does this all mean for the workforce? Obviously, there are workforce implications of AI. So first off, you have to understand that what people told us in a survey we released in June of 2025 is that 61% of manufacturing leaders believe that they will be investing more in AI in the next 2 years. So some of that's just marginal, 0 to 49%, but some of it is as much as 200% or more. So AI investments are on the rise. Meanwhile, they're also telling us that they don't expect, or at least only partially agree with the statement that tomorrow's factories will evolve to be self-managing and self-learning. Now, we would call this lights out factories, factories where there aren't people in the loop. They're possible right now. In fact, Yokogawa, a Japanese company, ran a chemical plant autonomously with AI at the helm for 35 consecutive days. No people, just AI, just automation for 35 days. And if you think that happened within the last year, you'd be wrong. It happened before ChatGPT was even unveiled. It happened in early 2022. ChatGPT wasn't announced or rolled out until November of 2022. So lights out factories were available and possible even before we got to this new stage and this boom of generative AI. But what people are telling us in the survey results that you're seeing on screen is that they don't necessarily think that that's where we're headed. Sure, they'll use some lights out things in cells or in specific areas, like maybe in a paint shop or in some other specific task or process in their organization, but they're not aiming for those lights out, no people in the loop factories. They're also telling us, and this is a study that we released in August of 2024, there's a slight majority telling us that headcount will either not be affected or will increase as AI comes into the workforce. They're telling us also that they somewhat understand what those digital roles may be. They don't fully understand it at this point in time. But what they do understand is that leadership needs to change. The way that your leaders, whether they're at the top of the pyramid or the mid-level leaders, they need to think about how digital is different, how it's different when you're not only managing people, but also managing AI agents or maybe even being managed by AI agents. So what does this all mean for jobs? So first off, in the early stages, the jobs that may be replaced by AI are things that are those 4Ds. So the dull, the dirty, the dangerous, the difficult. You may even throw in dark in there. But for metal fabricators, AI isn't about robots taking over the floor. Though we could absolutely make a case for AMRs carrying heavy machines or heavy materials to the machines at precisely the right moment that they need to be there. But for metal formers, it's more about AI and vision systems that catch defects instantly. Um, it's about predicting when your tooling may wear out. It's about analyzing due dates, setup requirements, available resources and materials, and optimizing your schedule for your sequencing. But just out of curiosity, I've been sort of tracking loosely this idea of how many jobs out there have AI in the job description. And so in October of 2023, I went in and I put AI prompt writing into Indeed and asked how many jobs are out there. And it told me 120 jobs had AI prompt writing in the job description. When I went back 7 months later in May of 2024, there were 1,000 plus jobs. And I really didn't know if Indeed set a 1,000 plus jobs and that was like the cap, and that meant that there were unlimited jobs out there. But I went back in September and I put the exact same prompt in there. How many AI prompt writing jobs are out there? And I want you to form a number in your head before I ask this. Okay, you got a number? Was it higher or lower than 81,000? Because in September of 2025, there were 81,000 jobs where AI was embedded in the job description in some form, AI prompt writing. So people are looking for that skill set now. And so it's embedded in almost every single job that's out there, I would say. So where does that leave us? Where are we? First off, it's scary that 60% of those who have AI in their organization do not have any targets. But for those who do, 63% are either hitting their targets or overperforming their targets. So you need to have targets. You need to know what your goal is. Meanwhile, a lot of organizations are telling us that they have a high degree or a moderate degree of collecting the right data for their business needs. But unfortunately, 56% are saying they don't have the ability to collect the right AI-ready data. So data continues to be a struggle. And there's also misalignment. So what are the most important people challenges? Lack of skills, lack of evidence, lack of management. There are too many silos, concerns about job displacement. There are all kinds of obstacles in place with the workforce. And organizations don't have training programs in place. 55% say that there isn't a training program about digital transformation, about AI, about how you're going to move forward into the manufacturing 4.0 world. And there are strategy issues as well. Only half of the companies surveyed said that they had an AI strategy. And leadership is also a hurdle right now. They're providing funding. They're talking about it to some degree, but they're not walking the walk. They're not involved directly in AI use. They're not personally using AI. So it's one thing for a leader to go out and say, we should be using this because it will change us. But it's another thing for them to actually be doing the work. And so where are we headed? Well, 70% say that AI will be essential to grow their business by 2030. So we have all the pieces in place but we still have these hurdles to get over. And if we're going to go from A to B to C, we have those underlying conditions. We have the supporting technology. We have the user conditioning. We have the critical mass. We have the problem or need that we need to solve. There are almost 500,000 jobs open in manufacturing right now. So we have a need, and we have that data issue. But if I'm going to leave you with three thoughts before we get into Q&A, first, there may be new wrinkles to AI, but AI itself is not new. The conditions are. Secondly, AI works best with humans in the loop, not humans in the way. So you need to bring humans along. You need to bring your people along as you implement any kind of digital transformation change, whether it be AI or automation or anything. And you need to know what the problem, the third major point of this is you need to know the problem you're trying to solve. We saw that 63% of those with goals are either hitting them or exceeding those goals and those targets. So you need to set goals. You need to know what you're trying to achieve, and you need to bring people along so they embrace that change, so they embrace the goal that you're trying to move towards, and they can be part of that solution. And I'd love to hear some questions. Invite Brad back on to talk through that. While he's getting on, I'm going to leave this slide up with my email and my LinkedIn. Happy to connect with you anywhere, whether it be email or be LinkedIn. If you're not able to ask your question today, please reach out to me. I'm happy to connect, and I'd love to hear from you. All right, Brad, good to have you back on.
Thank you, Jeff. Yep, thank you very much. A lot of good information in there, and by that survey, some of those survey findings are really quite astonishing. The growth in jobs is remarkable.
Yeah.
You mentioned you glossed over, but I was interested when you said something to the effect that AI agents are going to manage people someday. Is that
That's very possible. That's very possible. We're not seeing it yet, but it's possible that you could be taking some instruction from an AI agent where that agent has been informed about all kinds of different things going on. It may be privy to analytics where instead of a person going out and trying to figure out what the analytics are saying, the AI is actually figuring that out, helping to make decisions or making the decisions on its own, and then telling you how to adjust what you're doing. If you have a vision system in a factory and you have some sort of working condition that might be ergonomically or safety related, that could be a problem. That vision system could already today be telling a worker how to adjust what they're doing, how to adjust how they're moving something from one place to another. And so even without an AI agent, generative AI can already be doing that with a vision system today. And maybe that's not your boss, but it is telling you something that can help your organization. It can help with throughput. It can help with safety. It can help with all kinds of efficiencies.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that. We have a couple minutes for questions before we get into our panel. If anybody wants to ask Jeff any questions about the survey or about what he's seeing out there in the market. You mentioned at the beginning, Jeff, that so many AI pilot projects you see are failing. Do you see that getting better over time? Have you seen it getting better? I'm sure you would predict that it's going to get better, but you didn't seem overly concerned with projects failing.
I'm not. I'm a big believer in failing fast. So the fact that 95% of generative AI projects, according to that MIT study, are failing and failing to deliver scalable results, it's not scaring me. I think we as an industry, if we put up guardrails, if we bring people along and fail fast, we're going to get to where we're going much quicker. When you look at some of those early technologies, of course, the tech bubble burst in 2001, and I'm not saying that the AI bubble is not going to burst any day now, but that didn't stop innovation. There were still companies coming about after the tech bubble in 2001. Google was here in 1998, so the fact that it's still around and one of the biggest companies in the world, Apple was around, Microsoft, Facebook didn't exist. All of these technologies have come about since the tech bubble burst in 2001. It wasn't a death sentence. And so if 95% of these generative AI projects are failing early, that's actually a good thing because it moves us forward towards success.
Right. A couple more questions, and then we're going to launch into our panels.
Great.
Do you feel like small to mid-sized manufacturers, which is really kind of the core of manufacturing, right? Do small to mid-sized, do they really have enough data to do meaningful machine learning?
Well,
Starts with data, right?
yeah. What we're seeing, and there are way more small and medium manufacturers out there than there are of the big dogs.
Yep.
We're still seeing a lot of sensors on equipment, and those sensors are as often as you're open. If you're open 24/7, those sensors are sending data 24/7. Manufacturing produces more data than any other industry.
Good.
You might think of it as finance or healthcare, but it's manufacturing. There's way more data out there, and sensors aren't that expensive. But data is overwhelming. But I'm a fan of The Simpsons, and there's an old Simpsons episode where Homer Simpson does this toast, and he says to alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Yeah.
I like to apply that same logic to AI. So AI is the cause of and solution to all of your data. AI, even simple tools, free tools like ChatGPT can take that data and make sense of it for you. And that's something that's a low-hanging fruit that the small and medium manufacturers who already have sensors on some of their equipment can do. And vision systems aren't that expensive now either. So I think there's a lot of opportunity out there.
I do know the pricing on vision systems has come way down in the last several months.
Yeah.
Last question. So, AI taking jobs, the question from the audience is specific to welding jobs, but where do you see AI in terms of replacing people, replacing manual work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question. For welding jobs, I think that that's going to depend on the automation that's in place in an organization. If you don't have the automation and the robots and those sorts of things to actually do the welding, you're looking more at vision systems that can point out things like defects so that they can be handled in real time rather than having to do rework later. If you have somebody who's welding something and a vision system's overhead and it's saying, oh, we got this seam wrong or whatever it might be, they can go in and make the correction, the operator. So instead of thinking about it as artificial intelligence, you can think of it as augmented intelligence. Something that's augmenting the workforce and aiding those workers in order to do their job better. I think there will be some job displacement, especially if you do have automation, if you do have robotics and things like that.
Sure.
But for the most part, I think it's more aiding what's happening.
Yeah. Okay. No, what I hear is there just aren't people to fill the jobs. It's not just replacing people, it's allowing companies to.
Yeah, there's 400 and some open manufacturing jobs, and it's getting worse. By 2030, there'll be over 1 million open manufacturing jobs.
Very good. And the report that you referenced and showed charts and graphs from, can we make that available to our
yeah. So you'll see I'm happy to do that. You'll see on the screen my URL, manufacturingleadershipcouncil.com. All of that information is free, open to the public, and available there. And so you can access that. There's a search function, just put in survey, and you'll see all of the surveys that we've done. But I'm happy to respond directly to emails or LinkedIn requests for any information.
Excellent. All right, Jeff, thank you so much for a very thought-provoking presentation. It really does set the table for the rest of the morning here. We're going to jump right into our first panel discussion, which is on smart manufacturing and what folks are doing on the floor with shop floor data collection and sensors and smart manufacturing overall. So we're going to welcome back Ryan and Lance to your panel, and Jeff's going to go ahead and moderate that session. So Jeff, your panelists are here, and take it away.
All right. Welcome, Lance. Welcome, Ryan. Good to have you here. I'm excited for this conversation. To sort of set the tone, would you mind telling us a little bit about your operation? Let's start with you, Ryan.
Ryan Hosteller with General Stamping and Metalworks. Work out of our South Bend, Indiana facility. We've got two facilities in the South Bend facility and a Wisconsin facility. I'm our digital director, so I oversee all of our IT work. And so a lot of the things we're trying to do with machine data, AI fall under our scope of projects.
Great. Lance?
Yeah, CEO of All Metals Fabricating. We are a job shop focused on precision sheet metal fabricating and machining. We do, we virtually serve every industry, alternative energy, data centers, and telecom being the largest, but serve virtually every industry. So,
Good. So, Lance, I think if I remember correctly, you started your digital journey about a decade ago. What did that look like in those early days?
Well, we actually started our automation journey about a decade ago. I think that digital more so about 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, on the automation front, we took a immediate big deep dive in, which is probably reflective of my personality, high risk tolerance. But we started with a $2 million automated laser cutting storage solution, and so that was a big pain point for us, was laser cutting, and we needed to do laser, and so we went ahead and took the deep dive into having a fully automated work cell. And so I think that you can start big or you can start small, but just start somewhere, whether that's automating processes, automating equipment, even simple little things with helping people have more automated tools, implementing cobots, any of these things, implementing automated quoting software. You can start anywhere, but and depending if you've already started, how do you move the ball forward into other departments or other processes?
And Ryan, I think you're trying to start simple and grow with your automation. So first up, what kinds of data are you gathering, and how are you using that data?
Yeah. So we've done a variety of smaller automations. So as Lance talked about a little bit too, we've automated some of our software integrations, passing data back and forth. In terms of, we're starting to work through machine data and gathering that. And we just picked a department, and for us that was our stamping department. It was a department that had the data a little more friendly from the OEM to receive it, versus some of the other OEMs that we work with that are a little more protective of their data, that we've had to work through more steps to get access to it. And so we just wanted to start in one area, get a project going so that people can see what it can provide, both from the operators to supervisors to management for how we're doing in our stamping department is a first step.
So was the goal of that just to get people used to it, or and not to overwhelm them?
Yeah. So we wanted to first start and validate that it was helping the operators. So we're helping give them real-time feedback in terms of their performance. So supervisors can see how we're performing as well, and ask questions early on rather than waiting till a production run is finished to try and understand why it took twice as long as we had expected. And also find out what that real-time production is. Is it the machine running and not producing as we had expected, or is it people taking those little micro breaks in between things that you don't notice when you're relying on the person to say whether the machine is running or not?
And Lance, same for you. Like, what was your initial goal? That set your data journey in motion.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more opportunistic, honestly. The partner that we were using had an early adopters. ECI had acquired part of Allura in a partnership, and so they had an early adopters program. So, uh, there's pros and cons to doing that. Pros being typically you get a discount. Cons being you're working through a lot of the kinks. Um, but so started just opportunistically, to be honest. But really, what was attractive to us is, one, I wanted to gamify monotonous, long-running, jobs for employees, which we'd already done through efficiency. So we've tracked efficiency, meaning, are they beating the times they were given on a job? We've done that for a long time. And we begin to incentivize and bonus people based on them beating their efficiencies over the course of the quarter. The issue with that is, there's ways to hide or manipulate the system. Not saying that our people would do that, but you want to just remove all obstacles, and you want to, not obstacles, but opportunities for that. And you want full visibility. So, the three things we're measuring is employee efficiency, employee utilization, meaning how often are they clocked in on jobs while they're here, and then machine utilization. So once you have visibility into all three of those, there's really nowhere to quote unquote hide. And so you get the full picture of what's going on that job. So if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I need more time on this job," it's okay. Well, let's look at the machine utilization. There's some big long breaks, and run and beam on time or whatever you want to call it. There's a mill, a break, or a laser. And so what was going on there? So you really have the full picture when you look at all three of those metrics combined together, and gamifying it for the employees. So incentivizing them towards beating these metrics so that they can, and rewarding them accordingly for it. So you want to use it as a carrot, not a whip, when you're talking about machine, data monitoring data.
Great. Yeah. Ryan, going back to you, you told me at one point when we were meeting previously that some of your challenges to see what you can get and how easily you can get it. How did that philosophy take shape, and how did that shape your early steps into data collection?
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned, we have a wide range of operations that we perform: laser cutting, bending, robotic manual welding, stamping, assembly. And so through all of that, we have a variety of equipment manufacturers that we're working with. And as we're looking at different departments and where our critical resources were, we saw that in our stamping department that was going to be we thought we could get a quick win with it. And, as you were talking earlier, with lots of projects failing, and just, sometimes in general with IT projects and their rates of failures kind of combined with that overall, we wanted to choose somewhere where we thought we could get something done and up for everyone to be able to use. Similar to Lance, we're looking at trying to find ways to use that efficiency and productivity as we measure it to motivate the operators and reward them for it. Again, not trying to use it as a negative, but as a bonus and as a way of helping incentivize the production.
Makes sense. Okay. Lance, my understanding is that for your automation journey, it started in the back office instead of moving directly to the shop floor. Why did you take that route, and how did it set the stage for what came later with sensors and machine data?
Yeah, I believe, I can't remember if we started with back office or front office. I think you mean the same thing, but so yeah, front office, I think it is with, and once again, opportunistic. I'd been looking at automating quoting for a while, was really intrigued by it. Our setup is different from a lot of manufacturers, meaning that we have one point of contact for the customer. So that person is doing estimating and account management. So there's pros and cons to both approaches, and I could argue strongly for either one. But that makes it more challenging for us to hire people. And then I'd also see, I'd be frustrated with, with one person quoting stuff differently and higher than another person based on their risk tolerance. And so I really wanted to standardize the way things were quoted. And so that, whether one person or the next is quoting something, they're getting, very close to the same pricing. And so that's was kind of the driver of it. And we were very fortunate that we implemented this right before the material prices spiked, because, as a production facility that's doing 90% repeat work, we don't historically have to requote things. And so we were having to requote every job constantly, and meanwhile growing and getting new business in. So by automating quoting, we were really able to accomplish everything we needed to that year and grow while also having to quote all this repeat work. Now, a big mistake I made was we simultaneously implemented machine monitoring. And so big lesson for everybody is never implement two softwares at the same time. And so that was a big challenge for us. Fortunately, the providers on the software side carried a lot of the legwork, but I won't be doing that ever again.
It's a good lesson. Let's talk about some other lessons, Lance. What are some of the best practices that you've learned when selecting and installing devices like sensors or cameras? Anything you'd warn others to watch out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think particularly with machine monitoring, it's, I always say anytime I implement anything, you've got to get the buy-in from the people on the floor. Now, the machine monitoring, that might be a little bit more tricky. And normally, like when we buy a new piece of equipment, like the lead for that department will be spearheading that decision-making process. And I'll be, me and leadership will be walking alongside that person to help them choose the best machine for the application. But with machine monitoring, it was a little bit more like, hey, we're going to do this. And this, fortunately, we had the relational collateral with our people. They know we put our people first. And so, the concern always there is the big brother approach. And so if you've, had a, more of a whip mentality in terms of leadership, that'll be more difficult to implement. But I think getting people to see the value of like, hey, we're trying to give you more visibility into, so that you can gamify and make, long-running, boring jobs. You can see in what you're doing and beating these goals. And I think that's the key. Is that'd be my warning. Is just, and then with cameras too, it's like, hey, we're trying to, whatever you're trying to accomplish with the camera, whether it's being able to see remotely from at home, that's one thing. Like our laser operator can see, if the laser stops, what's going on, come back up here, get it back going. But yeah, getting buy-in from the floor, building trust on the front end, and then buy-in as you do it. And then really you can get all the buy-in you want, but my warning would be you can't use that as a whipping tool. You've got to use it as a carrot as you implement it. And the numbers will be the numbers. You'll be surprised. They'll be lower than you expected. And so when you talk about, machine utilization, so, you've got to be ready for that. And then you've just got to help people. Okay, here's where we're at. How do we bump this up 5, 10, 20, 30%, which we eventually saw about 30% increase in utilization once they had that visibility.
Ryan, same question to you. What watch-outs would you have or could you share about things like sensors and cameras?
Yeah, it's a change management process as much as it is a technical project and implementation. And so, yeah, getting buy-in across the board for everyone in the departments that's going to be working on it and involved in it is critical. It can't be just here's a new tool, and if people aren't interested in it, it'll just be another thing that sits on the shelf and is there, but not used and not paid attention to, and won't accomplish the goals of helping increase that efficiency or productivity or machine utilization.
How do you decide what's worth monitoring with these sensors? Right.
So generally, it's working with the supervisors and the technicians in the departments to know they know what's critical. I mean, I don't know what sensors are best suited and for all of our machines, but we have experts in all of those departments that will be able to provide that information. And so we're really looking at those people, maintenance team, technicians to help us understand what they want to monitor, and then we'll help get them visibility to that information so they can use it rather than having to guess what things are happening.
Makes sense. Lance, how are you integrating data from the machine monitoring, for example, that you mentioned? How are you integrating that into the broader systems, and what are the biggest challenges been?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, I'm a big believer of, you want to, ideally you want one point of accountability, but sometimes that's not always possible. Meaning, like, if you have a data monitoring solution that is a separate party, I would say the key there is 360 integration. And so you want ultimately one system, your ERP, MRP system. And so I think it's very important that no matter what you do, whether it's automated quoting, data monitoring, whatever it is, AI, that it's all integrated into your ERP, MRP solution. That's something that I'm a big believer of. And fortunately, a lot of these, you see it kind of across the board, from programming software to, MES scheduling software to, ERPs. They're all trying to do it all now. And so that's a good and a bad thing, because you can't be good at everything, right? So there's some caution flags there. But the good thing is, I think that they will all, develop core competencies. Maybe not all, but the key players will develop core competencies in these. And so you may be able to just go to one ERP that has, everything integrated, everything under one roof. But if not, and which is probably more likely the case, just making sure that the systems are talking to each other and that they are integrated.
Yeah, let's kind of stay on that for a minute with making data actionable. Lance, you just mentioned ERP systems and integrating AI into that. What does that look like in practice? How is it helping you get more value out of the data that you have?
Yeah, I mean, so first thing is, I think you want, as it relates to machine monitoring, and really everything, it drives down, it really boils down to getting better OEE, being more efficient, making more money. And so, with the data that you're tracking, you want it to be focused on that. And so that's what you should track. What is going to improve your throughput, improve your efficiency. And typically, if the machine's running more, those things are at least your throughput is going to be increased, maybe not necessarily your efficiency. So I think anything that relates to that is key. Do you want me to answer that related to AI too, or?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, which I think, the AI, we're just starting to scratch the surface. But it really needs to, what I mean by that is, what we've done thus far is we've implemented a chatbot that is on our website. So we uploaded all of our bin tables, our tooling, any bit of information we have into a chatbot, and made it available on our website to customers so that they could get questions answered in real time without having to email us. It's been funny. I've had customers ask me a question. I've gone to the chatbot to get the answer. It's pretty amazing. Regarding standing up a large language model that's integrated with our ERP solution, we're still in the works of that. We've done it, but we've run into some challenges with how things are calculated. The reports that the ERP solution provides, they don't give you visibility into how that is calculated. And so teaching the large language, and just really, there's so much data in there. So that's kind of, we're at a little bit of a halt, but we've got a path forward there. But really with AI, I think, the things you want to improve is business information. So being able to the immediate win is just being able to get whatever question you want answered in real time with with a few keystrokes, as opposed to like going and clicking a report, cross-referencing against another report, or comparing a dashboard to something else. Just being able to get quick answers, and then improved workflows, I think, is the ultimate goal. Not so much on the large language model. Hopefully that will be the case too. But kind of automating. Some people, when they say AI, they really mean automation, and all that's kind of intertwined and not very clear. I think you did a great job on the agentic piece of it, which is ultimately what you want to be able to do is figure out how you can implement agentic AI to help your customer service, your estimators, all of them work more efficiently from the front office to the floor to the back office.
Yeah. Ryan, let's stay with data, and you mentioned people and their importance. How are your operators involved in interpreting and acting on the data from the shop floor? What are you using to help them make sense of it?
So we're providing with that real-time information, so they can see what their targets are, and that lets us then be able to help them with that. So if they're running into questions, we can see earlier on who's is it the operators doesn't first time running the part, is it something with the process that we can improve. So that gets them curious about how they can improve their performance to meet some of those targets and goals that we've set for them. Because when they can see that, they're more inclined to work towards that than that long monotonous run that's happening with things, and when it's really easy to kind of just get into a lull and not realize that your performance is slowly slipped over the course of a long run and on that part.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's also making it so that our supervisors and other leads in the area can come ask questions too, and find out what's going on, versus necessarily always waiting for the operator to ask questions, because sometimes they think that's just the way it is, and they don't want to interrupt somebody else's time, but it's their time that's the important time.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, Ryan, about change management. I think it was you who mentioned that. It's a big part of any digital transformation, and so I'm curious, what's worked, what hasn't worked, when it comes to getting buy-in from your teams, especially for technologies that are new, things like cobots or new data systems or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it really is making sure all levels of the organization are involved in knowing what's happening and being able to give their input into it. If we're looking at a cobot, is it one that our maintenance team is familiar with? Is our operators reusing it somewhere else? It can't just be one person who, whether it's IT or leadership or supervisors, they can't just be one person who says, let's do this, because we're trying to make sure we've got everybody involved in it. Makes the project run smoother. That way it's not necessarily just, well, here's a task, but you don't see the larger picture that's going on with why we're doing it. And when we look at a lot of these things like cobots and automation, it definitely falls into some of the slide that you had with the 4Ds. We're trying to automate those types of things so that our operators and employees can spend time thinking about the things that matter, not counting how many parts are in a box. We want them looking to make sure that they have everything that they need, and definitely the dull and the mundane are the things. It's not to replace operators and reduce our head count. It's about giving them more to do that's involved that intelligence than just the dull.
Yeah, more fulfilling work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lance, same question to you. What are you seeing on the change management front? What's working? What isn't? How are you getting that buy-in?
Yeah, I think initially as we started having all this data, we were giving all these, giving everybody so many numbers, and to track and keep up with, and really, what those, and setting goals for each of them. And, like machine utilization, like that can change what the goals are, can and will change very quickly. I mean, we had a massive influx of work in October. So what our goal for lights out manufacturing, if that department doesn't have any work, that needs to be run lights out, you set a goal and it's like, what's the point of the goal if they don't need to do that? To meet their numbers and to keep the workflow coming through at the right pace. And so it's keeping it simple, keep it as few numbers as possible for them. You can have the data, but what you give them, you want to just simplify. And then I think moving the goal to help them win, as opposed to just setting a goal and having it, like right now, we need to be hitting a lot more lights out production than what we had before. And so making sure the goals are realistic, giving them as few numbers as possible to be focused on, because if you give them too much, they're not going to focus on any of it. And numbers that they can control. One frustration we have amongst people on the floor is like we track jobs tracking late, and they take it as and queue time and their department, and they take it as if they have a bunch of jobs tracking late in their department, that they've done something wrong, and we have to continually explain to them like, no, that's not you that have done anything wrong. You can't. That's just a red flag of how much more you guys need to work, how much you need to be asking for help from other departments. It's meant to be a trigger to alarm you. And with queue time, like they may have, a customer may have put something on hold and it sat in their department for a month because the customer doesn't need it and we don't need to be working on it right now. So that increases their queue time a lot. And so making sure that they either, if there are metrics that they can't control, that they understand what the purpose and intent of them are, and for the ones that can control, making sure they're realistic and that you adjust them according to the season that you're in.
Nice. Let's hone in a little bit about that movement from preventative to predictive. How close are you to using data to predict for predictive maintenance, or to identify bottlenecks before they happen? We can stay with you, Lance, and then move over to Ryan.
Yeah, on the predictive one, man, that's a loaded question. For that aspect of it, it's more of the machine tool providers, software, just tracking utilization and downtime, log codes. You really can't tell that much in terms of predictive. The machine tool providers advertise that they can do all this prediction, and I think that's somewhat true. It also varies from machine to machine within their catalog, and so, but you really have to lean on them for that. They advertise, oh, we'll be watching this and be predicting it, but it really takes a more proactive approach. So having them come in and do a full PM and give you a list of parts that could be, coming needed in the near term, and potentially stocking those or make sure they have those stateside. But the issue that we see is so much of as machines have gotten more sophisticated, they break down more. It's kind of like a catch-22. The more bells and whistles on, the more problems you have. And so no matter how much prediction they claim to be able to have, it seems like, like we got 2 machines down right now, and there was no prediction about it. So, but as far as identifying bottlenecks, that information's there. You got to the tricky part is like making sure you're in front of it and pulling people into that department. What I think the next step is figuring out level loading. And there's nothing out there that I'm finding that really manages that as advertised. That's a very tricky thing, and I'm really hopeful that AI will help with that, and help you with the level loading, so that you don't have as much bottlenecks. But some of it's unpreventable, and the idea that the best thing you can do is see the bottleneck coming and be ready to either hiring people in advance, which is a mistake we just made. We saw a bottleneck coming, it was on there, the capacity was taken up for months, and we should have been in front of it, and then we waited 2 weeks too long, and frustrated the lead in that department. So you've really got to take swift action. Sometimes I think you can just think, well, it'll figure itself out, but it won't.
Mm-hmm. Brian, for you,
Yeah.
how are you using data for predictive maintenance and to identify those bottlenecks?
Yeah, we run into a lot of the OEMs that are saying they'll monitor and help us with that, and yeah, again, varied success with what that leads to. So yeah, we want to get there, but it's also sometimes feels like it's a long ways away to get there, and so we're trying to do things where we can find those help with our scheduling to accommodate some of those unforeseen things that we can't predict yet, and just finding ways to handle bottlenecks, like Lance said, of here's what's coming in the schedule, how can we more efficiently align our schedule, and different tools provide different levels of scheduling expertise, but again, none of them truly do what they say they do with the magical one click and everything is lined up for you.
Yeah, you said it's a long way to get there. What are you finding are sort of those hurdles that you need to get over? Or even are there enablers out there? Is it things like the technology? Is it the culture? Is it the data quality? What's standing in the way and making that a longer journey?
Kind of goes into a couple of those. For us, you always run into the challenges of one piece of bad data breaks that trust for everyone, and so then they lean towards not trusting anything if they see it too frequently. And so we're trying to start with the data and building that trust in what we're monitoring, how it's being calculated, showing them what's going on with that, so that when something does look abnormal, we can figure out why it is and what was causing it, so that we don't have to go back to square one of, well, I'm just not going to look at this report because it's been wrong too many times.
Great. I think we have about 5 minutes left, 6 minutes maybe. So I want to make sure that we have time to kind of get into AI as well, because I know that's sort of the thing that a lot of people are talking about and excited about, or maybe scared of or nervous about. And so I think it's important that we dive into that a little bit. So Lance, let's start with you. AI and APIs are changing what's possible for manufacturers and for manufacturing software. How do you see AI shaping your operations over the next, let's say, like 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think with APIs, you can plug into the ERP system, much easier, and use that to, you're not as dependent on the ERP system having AI. There are, I'm encouraged by the even just in the last 6 months, how much I've seen, now that AI is writing code so sophisticated, the leaps that, we're looking at a transition of ERP solutions, and I'm like, hey, we need to kick the can down the road because everything is changing so fast. The best ERP solution in a year from now may not even be around yet, and so I think a lot of it is, just being able to improve the workflows, improve the visibility into the business, predict issues. Those are the things that I see as major benefits. I think, and the beautiful thing about being in manufacturing, I tell people it's like, hey, it's going to wipe out 30% of jobs, but can't wipe out skilled trades. So let's embrace it and use it. And what I tell people is with automation and throw AI in that too, we look at it as job security, not a replacement of humans, but enhancement for humans. And what I mean by job security is we all know manufacturing is very cyclical. And so, a lot of shops, depending on how they're structured, may be hiring and laying off a lot. Well, as you depend more on automation, you can ramp up and ramp down without necessarily needing to hire and lay people off. And so I think the same will be true with AI, and just particularly in the front office, back office, being able to get, more out of each person, allowing them to, I always say my job is to make sure I got the right people in the right seat with the right tools. And so helping them be as efficient as possible in their job. And I'm hopeful that AI, can improve their workflows and help them accomplish more in the time that they're here at work.
Ryan, same for you. Are you experiencing the same things? What do you see as how AI is going to be shaping your operations in the next 18 months?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at how we're going to be able to use it and leverage it. The agentic AI is definitely intriguing to us, and finding ways to build on that. Trying to find things to say, an ERP can't be good at everything. Every ERP has strong sides and weak areas, and so the AI and APIs being able to pull information, process it, push it back to different systems, really let us find what is the optimal solution for each area of the business, and not just having to live with the weak areas of an ERP system. It becomes a lot easier to find either another tool to integrate with, or build a tool ourselves that, with some of the coding help now that's out there, that can make it an easier solution without having to go completely do an ERP change. That's a timely and costly project on its own.
Yeah, that's a great point too. I mean, that's why we're standing up the large language model connected with our ERP. It's like maybe that can buy us more time. I mean, our biggest challenge is scheduling. We're currently doing a trial with Sky Planner to build a new scheduling software, which has AI integrated. But yeah, to your point, you can overcome some of the challenges that your ERP solution might not offer by having AI. And I would just encourage everyone that a good first step, what's been really helpful for us is I threw a job posting for an AI intern up over the summer, had like 100 applicants. And we hired someone. I would encourage you to hire someone that has good personal skills, because ultimately you're going to need to be working with your people to help them improve their workflows. It's that I mean, you can get somebody, an intern, for $15-20 an hour that can do stuff that nobody in your organization could do. And then we're looking at bringing this guy on, and eventually I've got a career path for him to be like chief technology officer. And so when he graduates, he's going to be in May, he's going to be coming on full time. So that's a good first step for people. Just find an intern and just have them figure out where they can add value. Build you a chat bot, stand up a large language model, or just work with people to observe workflows and figure out what shortcomings you have in your ERP solution, and figure out how they can overcome those with AI.
That's a great example. And one of the things that people are scared about with AI is that, especially those entry-level jobs, are going to go away. But it sounds like you found a solution where an entry-level person is actually building their career on that AI. So that's awesome. We have about a minute left, maybe two. So let's, as we head into the home stretch here, what lessons have you learned along the way? You've both come very far in your digital journeys. If someone who is joining us today, one of the participants, were to ask you what you wish you'd learned sooner, or where they should start, or how they could get moving on the same path that you're on, what would you tell them? Either of you can start this one.
It's just a matter of starting. Don't worry if it fails. I mentioned earlier, you learn from a failure too. So, and also just make sure that, with a lot of these, is there a good solution that's not necessarily perfect? And, if it provides benefit, it doesn't have to be perfect as a starting point for your project. But if you don't take those first steps to at least try something, you won't know if it works or not.
Yeah, I think just start somewhere. I think that the beautiful thing is there's no point of arrival, right? Like the further you get into the journey, the further you realize you get to go. And so just start somewhere. I think the key is anything that you're going to implement, make sure you've got the people in place to carry it through. Me as a visionary, I can I want to implement things and just be done with it. I don't want to. I'm on to the next thing, and so follow through and continual maintenance. Managing rather is not my strong suit, and so making sure you've got the right person to oversee that and take action with it and make sure it sticks. But even if it doesn't, if it's not, I heard a phrase called try-storming, similar to what you said, Jeff, fail fast. It's, just try something out. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you learn and you move on. And so just start somewhere, whether it be an automation, machine monitoring, hiring an AI intern, any of those is great. Just start somewhere. And one last thing I'll say, sorry, is I think one of the biggest successes for me is making sure you're getting the most out of your ERP solution. When I started here 15, 17 years ago, we were using a tiny sliver of it. And so you have tons of tools available to you that you're most likely not using. And so partner with your ERP, hire a consultant from them to come out and evaluate your business. What are the areas that you can move the ball forward? That was a game changer for us. And we had him come out every few years of like, what's the next step of us utilizing our software more? So lean on your ERP provider and help partner with them to help you move the ball down the field, because you might not need to go get something new. You might have plenty of tools available to you that you're not using. And so just get the most out of what you already have is a good starting place also.
Oh, that's excellent. That's a great place to end. Ryan, Lance, that was wonderful. I learned something. Try storming, and I learned a little bit more from this conversation. It's been a wonderful talk. I really enjoyed it. I know our audience took something from it. Brad, I want to hand it back over to you. And thanks again, Lance. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And thank you, Jeff, for moderating a really, really interesting conversation. I do want to, before you go away, Lance and Ryan, if you guys can, I wanted to find out, Jeff, I'm sorry, Lance, you mentioned, calling on your ERP provider. Is there maybe a success story you want to tell about the experience you got from bringing your ERP provider in?
I mean, this is so longer. Yeah. I mean, it started with simply like we used to key in the little wins go a long way. Like we used to key in our data instead of just scanning, into the job. And so, that reduced the amount of errors substantially. Using the quality module and having that real-time data tied to jobs and tracked to jobs. Automated invoicing is something, where we can do bulk send automated invoicing was something that was available. There's a lot of like bolt-on tools like those things that are easy wins to make sure you're getting the most out of it. Dashboards, having them create dashboards for you if they don't already have them out the box. What information would make your job easier. Like we had a custom report created for account managers where they could see all their jobs they can either do it by customer or by their field of, that they entered that job. And so they can see where every job is, whether by customer or all their jobs, and track them and see what their scheduled end date is. So they can get in front of, is this job behind schedule? Do I need to notify the customer? Do I think it can catch up? Those types of things, but giving your people the tools they need to help them be more effective at their job.
So, Ryan, how about you? Any success stories with kind of building out your use of the ERP software?
Yeah, I think for us a big part of that was integrating our estimating software with our ERP system for part creation. It was a lot of manual duplicate data entry that often led to chances of errors, and the ramifications of those, especially on new parts that we were awarded, can cause lots of problems downstream through operations, and so finding ways to automate that was a big win for us.
Excellent. And then the last question I want to see if you guys can comment on it. Our next panel discussion, we're going to talk more about AI and digital manufacturing and some of the issues that those technologies enable fabricators to overcome, some of the roadblocks to productivity. One of the ones we hear about a lot, and I'm sure you guys deal, Ryan and Lance both deal with this last, kind of rush orders that you got to integrate into your scheduling system and into your workflow. And have you seen any of these, whether it's ERP or through the machines themselves, or I know it's an AI application, maybe you're not quite there yet, but being able to react faster to these types of scheduling challenge that you're facing, so you're not pushing jobs all around the place. And anybody have some success with that? Lance, you're
Ryan, you're take them first.
I was gonna say, I think everybody runs into those issues, and we're trying to find ways to handle that, and so that's where some of the integrations and automations from quoting through to the production floor is part of what we're working through, and to be able to handle those, I don't think we've really solved the problem. We've just found ways to accommodate for it.
Okay.
Yeah, my solution is use Oshcut or send cut send. And then your customer knows. We actually just did that with a huge 70-piece order, or 70 different SKUs, and Oshcut came through for us great. Right now we're trying to build in capacity. One big thing is we're evaluating scheduling software as what if analysis, and we don't have that available to us. And shockingly, a lot of the scheduling software doesn't, because it's so complicated. And I think AI is going to help with that, this what if analysis. Sure, we can force a job through, but we don't really see the ramifications of that. And so, that's the challenge that we're trying to tackle right now. But in the meantime, if anybody needs to send out parts, those are two great options.
Okay. All right, great. Hey, thanks again to Lance and Ryan for sharing your stories, and Jeff, great job with your talk and with facilitating. So thanks so much. We are going to take a 5-minute break. We're right on schedule. We'll be back at 11:45 for the next panel on digital transformation. So we'll see you in 5 minutes. Thanks. All right, let's go ahead and bring out our second panel of experts for the day for our talk on digital transformation. So our panelists today come from suppliers, from the OEMs to the industry, all of whom have a real deep knowledge about where this digital transformation stands today, and maybe more importantly, where it's headed, and where it's headed in the very near future. So our facilitator for the session also comes from the fabricating industry, Colin Cosgrove. Colin is the president of Leister Manufacturing, which is a fabrication shop located in Greater Chicago. But before I turn things over to Colin, Allie, do you have that survey? Can we pop that survey up? we wanted to ask our attendees where you all are in your digital transformation journey. Allie, do you have that survey? If not, you guys can maybe, there it is. So please just take 2 seconds, answer this survey. I'm assuming I'll get to see the results. I'm not sure how this works, actually. Let's see.
Oh man, I can't vote.
No, sorry. Panelists can't vote.
I'm in Chicago. I wanted to vote 3 times. So,
Nice. Funny. So how do I get the results, actually? Al, do you know how I get it? So if you close the survey, do the results pop up?
Yeah, do you want me to close it?
Yeah, I think that's long enough for people. Did we get much of a response? Yeah, so there you go. 2/3 of our attendees have not even started on a digital journey yet, but 1/3 have. So thank you for filling out the survey. So Colin, with that, we'll go ahead and start the panel discussion. The floor is yours.
great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to lead the discussion and have some excellent, really knowledgeable guys on the call here. I'll apologize to everyone because 2 of us have these weird Irish accents, and that's trouble for you to understand, and we'll just figure that out. Google can probably do an AI translator or something. I don't know how that works. But maybe start with personal introductions, company introductions. So Fred, you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, hi. Good to see you again, Colin. Fred Cook, System Sales Manager for Prima Power North America. Like Colin, I'm an Irish expat. Came over to the States in 2003. I'm a manufacturing engineer. I ran a sheet metal fabrication facility in Corey, Pennsylvania. It was Great Lakes Data Racks and Cabinets. I was there for 10 years where I was a customer of Fin Power before they were Prima Power. So I knew the company very well, very much hands-on. I was involved from MES straight through to machine operation programming in CAD and CAM. And then about 13 years ago, I came to work for Prima Power as a system sales manager.
Thanks, Fred. Kartik, do you want to introduce you and your organization?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kartik Iyer. I'm the director at Trump at our smart factory in Hoffman Estates in Illinois. I've been with Trump about 6 years. Prior to that, I ran a software company that made CAD/CAM software for the sheet metal world. So I've been in the sheet metal industry about 24 years, most of my career. Currently, my focus is on helping fabricators transform their operations, related to automation, connectivity, and transparency. How we thread some of those our solutions together, and basically threading these technologies to help fabricators bridge gaps in their shop floor. So, yeah, happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Brace, you want to show where you're coming from?
Yes. I'd like to start off with saying it's an honor to be here, and thank you for PMA for organizing this panel. Being able to hear everyone's perspective has been absolutely amazing. But my name is Brace Worrell. I am the cybersecurity manager for Amada America. Pretty sure most of everyone on here knows who we are, but we're a global sheet metal equipment manufacturer, and I'm based out of the Schaumburg or Chicago office location. I've been in the IT field for north of 20 years, and for the last 16, I've been working with Amada in that field.
Great, thank you. As you can all tell, we've got some expertise here. For myself, president of Leicester Manufacturing, been in manufacturing here in the Chicago area for about 30 years, from the shop floor to the current role, and very curious to hear some of the answers we're going to hear from our panelists today. So we have a number of questions, some of them that we kind of worked through, but also we got great information earlier from Jeff Puma on vision systems and Gen AI and machine learning, and it's a lot to take in, right? So maybe we'll kind of drill in with some of the more specific details for fabricators. So Kartik, do you want to lead us off with why should fabricators commit to digital transformation in 2025?
Yeah, so There are several reasons digital transformation. You have to also understand how you define that and where you are in that journey. But some of the key things that kind of stand out to me, first things kind of looking into your operations and eliminating blind spots, kind of seeing what is happening on the shop floor, getting data so you can see machine utilization, work in progress, where your material is, raw materials, and so on. The second thing is getting improving, of course, productivity and throughput. That's always the mantra in job shops. How can I get more? Whether this is eliminating paper scheduling, which I think we talked about that earlier in the previous panel, and how can you react faster, not just by getting faster machines, but also in your operations. I think digital transformation also today, especially with some of the AI tools, it can help you with your quality inspection, which is a key part of what you make. How can you streamline that so that you can have better control on quality parameters, and whether it's or traceability as you produce parts. And then when you wrap all that together, it's also moving from a more a reactive world to a predictive world. I think digital transformation gives you that insight that helps you kind of plan for something ahead, which previously it was more reactive. I think, so these kind of are the same point as some of the key points. But I think lastly, I would also say, as we are going through this change in our workforce, one of the positives of digital transformation is also to help your younger workforce kind of look at manufacturing in a different light, that it's not just a dirty shop floor, but using tools which are very innovative, sophisticated, visual, software and hardware driven tools that can help them get excited to come into our workforce. So these kind of stand out to me as why customers should consider digital transformation.
Great. And for each of these questions, we'll ask the other two panelists to kind of jump in. So Fred, do you want to, from your perspective, why should fabricators commit to digital transformation?
Yes, absolutely. I think what we're seeing in today's technology, especially with machine builders like ourselves, we're all building very fast machines that can cut and bend pretty quickly. The slow part of the process, and I think all of your fabricators or any of our customers would tell you, is taking or shortening that time from taking the order to collecting the invoice, and that's what's critical. And you find that the manufacturing part of that process is here, right? It's very short. So the digital transformation is going to, obviously we're already in it. If you're using a computer anywhere in the shop floor, you're already there. But it's this integration of knowledge, I think, is important. I think Jeff's slide earlier showing the boomers coming off the list and the Gen Xers we're heading into that list of aging workforce, is getting that shop rat knowledge, right? That thing that somebody knows into a digital world where that knowledge is automatically transferred or handed over to the next process. So it's not just stuck in somebody's brain, but it's shared knowledge.
Great. Race, do you want to add into the
Yes, no, that's absolutely perfect what everyone's been saying. Give me some runway here, because my expertise is in cybersecurity and IT, but it gives me a little bit unique perspective here. So when it comes to fabrication and manufacturers, what I see is their production is a puzzle that they're putting together while existing within that puzzle. So committing to digital transformation allows them to actually see all of the pieces and how to put that together. So what was stated earlier was making that data, which are those pieces, actionable. And that, I believe, is what really needs to be moved forward with, which improves efficiency, reduces errors, and just makes decision-making smarter across the whole operation. And that's what I believe manufacturers should commit to digital transformation on.
Okay, great. A lot of information on blind spots, productivity, AI utilization. There's a lot of things to tap into there. And I might come back later to the workforce piece, but maybe we need to define what digital transformation is, right? Because it's a very big term, right? I can think of like 400 different things that might fit into that. But from a panelist perspective, and I'll start with Fred, How would you define it? And then maybe from once with the definition, expand a little bit then on how does it directly impact, we're all operations folks typically here. How does it impact operations?
Yeah, I think part of our goal should be to break down the silos and to allow everything from order generation. That's even your sales force for the customer who's out in the field. They're making doors and door frames. Somebody can come to a web portal on their website and generate what the XY dimensions of these products should be. That information gets passed on automatically and hopefully gets automatically processed through your manufacturing process. I think part of these things to look at, and what I enjoy doing when I go to a client is looking at, like, sitting over their shoulder and watching their workforce or watching their work flow. Normally and traditionally, out comes the stack of manila folders to the CAN guy's desk, right? And he's got to do that sort. Here's the 16 gauge, the 16 gauge, the 18 gauge, the 20 gauge. And then he's got to go and say, okay, I have this drawing now. I've got to go look up an Excel spreadsheet that tells me what that material should be. And then I've got a second screen of my MRP ERP system that tells me how many I have to make and what the order number should be. Then he's got to fire up CAM. And hopefully he's got a good CAD file and he's not having to clean up DXFs. He's not having to trim edges and sort out fillets and notches and reliefs. This, I find, is where a huge amount of time gets sunk. And in order to bring all of these things together, one of my goals with clients, like all of us are trying to do, is to automate these processes so that somebody's not physically looking at a screen to pick out a piece of data, keep that in their brains, to go to another application and type that in. I think it was Lance in the last in the last panel mentioned the API for his ERP and connecting this data and this information. I would say that should go further. It should also be in the CAD. CAD files today are great with metadata. With metadata, we get a lot of information. Metadata can be transferred into CAM so that somebody's not playing spot the difference between a paper print and what they're trying to program through a piece of machinery. Things like grain direction can be automated. Part gets flipped or not flipped can be automated. And then that goes further downstream to other manufacturing processes. And also then the feedback loop needs to be closed. And I think we're all in this field today where we've got OPC UA now on machines. So there's a data stream of information coming back from the machine of its physical state, its PLC state, if it's on or it's off, or what it's making, or if it's in auto mode or jog mode. But on top of that comes the data analytics, right? So we're all providing machinery that's telling you what it made. But until you do something with that information, close that loop, and I liked what Lance was talking about with the API back to the MRP or ERP systems and maximizing your use there. You need probably some black box or some homebrew software. And this is where, and we'll talk about this later, where AI becomes the tool. Fabricators, I think, have a silver bullet when they can hire. And I love that he's bringing in an intern. I've got clients who bring in high school kids during their summer camp, and they come in and they do some coding. With AI today, you've got tools where you can write these applications and this code that can take that information from the machine and pump it back into the ERP or MRP system. Likewise, they can convert that information from CAD correctly into CAM, and then from CAM through to your planning or your routing operations, et cetera. And as Lance was saying earlier as well, quoting and automating quoting, all of this can be done as long as you have access to the data. So open systems, open files, break down the barriers, break down the silos. I think that's a key role for combining AI and digital transformation today.
That's a lot to take in, isn't it? Like,
sorry, it's a fire hose, yeah.
No, it is, but it's
Yeah.
but it's the reality of what we're all kind of trying to face and figure out. Where should we start digging into pieces of these? But I also want to give Brace and Kartik. We'll start with Brace, an opportunity to kind of speak to that. From your perspective, when you see, again, you've got this sort of cybersecurity background in IT. When you think about digital transformation, how would you define it, and how do you see it? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. So from my view, seeing the manufacturing arena, I see them moving from more of an analog, and I say this a lot, an analog art to a digital science. So they're trying to take hammer swings and make it into ones and zeros effectively in my mind. And that is absolutely amazing. Digital transformation and how that will directly impact operations, once again, goes back into how operations are run, decisions are made, and overall how a company will deliver value. And digital transformation is about, as was said earlier, breaking down the silos, but also ensuring that that data that is flowing between those spaces are accurate. And that's what digital transformation is. It's about having accurate data, knowing how to move on it, and knowing what to do with it when you have it.
Great. Kartik, do you want to add your part in for digital transformation definition?
Well, I think when Fred talked about the papers and stack of papers, it really brought back memories, because I've visited shops and you have an in box and an out box, and you have papers coming in. So that certainly resonates well, I'm sure. Hopefully, some others in the shop floor. But really, it is. I like to say, connecting systems, eliminating manual processes. I think that's going to eventually lead to you're doing it to improve your efficiency, and that's what's driving it. So, and that's going to be achieved by connecting systems. Today, most companies, not just in manufacturing, they have 2 or 3 different key systems. There's always an ERP. ERP is not only unique to us. There is an MES if you have some sort of production, again, not unique to us. MES can be any type of when I say us, I mean fabrication industry. And then there is a CRM system where you have to manage to connect your customers. So how do you, if you think of digital transformation and these 3 pieces, and maybe there's a finance system too, or we treat that separately, or that's a part of the ERP. But if you look at these 3 key systems, the ERP, the MES, and your CRM system, all acronyms here, but how can they seamlessly start from the point your customer asks you for something, you make it, you get it in, you process it, you give them a quote, and you send it to your floor, produce it, and then send it back to them. So how do you, where, if you did a value stream mapping or a swim lane analysis of your shop floor, how automated are you? How much manual effort and time is it taking for you to do that? And digital transformation is going to be your ability to say, I am satisfied with what I'm doing, or there's no opportunity. And one good way is to question each step and say, what if I don't have this? Why do I need it? Really question eliminating a software. The best software is no software, in my opinion. If you don't need it, but you need it, and eventually when it comes in, how can you use it as little as possible to get the most out of it? It's not about fancy UIs. It's not about maximum features. Today, it's about minimalistic, limited features with more automation. That's everything from your phone that you hold in your hand to your car that you drive. You see it everywhere, and that's where we're heading, because software is mature compared to 20 years ago, when it was a big deal to have software. No, now it's no longer the case. It's all about how to use it efficiently.
So each of you talked in different ways about connectivity, interoperability, maybe that's the wrong term, or interconnectivity between different systems, whether it's CAD, CAM, ERP, MES, and that's a sort of foundational in some ways. Let's take it maybe a level to more practical. Not that that's not practical, but from your perspective, where do we start? I think, I don't know, maybe Brad could remember the actual numbers of 2/3 or 75%, I think, said they hadn't started on their digital transformation journey. Where would you suggest people, this is where you go first? You know, a lot of the companies that are on here are small to mid-sized enterprises. We're all wearing a lot of hats. How do we make this practical, and maybe start folding in your answers a little bit of the AI piece of the puzzle as distinct from, or as a subcategory of, however you want to put it, for digital transformation? Where do we start? And Brace, if you could start with this, how do we make this practical? Where do we begin? For a lot of us who, some of this is just over our heads and we're trying to figure it out.
No, excellent. This is sort of what Jeff touched on earlier, is knowing how to apply, or what to apply the solution to. So a good first step would be a current assessment of your operations. Map out workflows, collect data, spot bottlenecks or areas that slow things down or affect quality. From there, you can see where AI or automation could make a real difference. So like speeding up processes, predictive maintenance is what was touched on earlier, as well as cutting down errors. So you're not just buying or deploying tech for tech's sake, but something that actually helps the shop floor. Now, when it comes to what that looks like, well, we touched on something earlier, specifically the question on welders and not having the talent, and it's hard to retain. Where this is where AI within systems actually will play a part. Speaking from an example with Amada, we have a fiber laser welder, the FLW, which actually has an AI task, a teaching assist system, which would allow, say, a green welder to come in, spot seams, improve the process, hit the ground running. And you can do that with new hires and old hires. And what makes it good about, your current staff that you have is it actually will take that tribal knowledge that operator has and puts it on the control. So if you know tips and tricks to the trade, anyone else that you bring in, go right ahead, dive into that knowledge capture and be welding as if they've done it for 20 years. This also brings back to smarter machines, so less guesswork. If you have AI systems that allow you to do automatic pathing or nesting, then it makes sequences, it makes material utilization higher. It makes you less prone to scrap and errors. And once again, predictive maintenance and process optimization, we've covered that. What does that look like? Machines that are able to, scan engines for any variances that shouldn't exist. Process optimization will say, hey, you make a nest of these parts. Well, you can get 5% more if you were to, move this part to this angle or to this side. This is where I would consider more edge device AI a benefit on the shop floor. I'm thinking more back of house than front of house. The ERP, the MES, that's front of house where you're able to actually do planning and long term. But how does that actually affect the employees, the engineers on the floor? This is actually questions that I get asked pretty consistently. Well, if AI is implemented on the machines, where do I go? Well, you don't go away. And I love what Jeff said earlier as well, where it's augmented intelligence. We're actually taking a large database of workers that have proven out their processes and putting on the machine to make what you do, you being the engineer, easier. And then not only able to just run that machine, but then to apply your talents to others down the line, improving throughput. So sorry if I went off on a tangent there.
That's great. Kartik and Fred, like you also to kind of think about again, practical fabricators. We're a fabricator. Where do we start? Where's the beginning point? How do we make this practical? And again, folding in AI as a piece to it too. Kartik, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as you listen to us speak, there's multiple ways to thread this needle, right? There's so many solutions available. I think I would say, to make it simple, if you are an owner on this call and you have your shop or a manager, or you're running a factory, and can you see what's happening in your factory sitting in your office? Do you have visibility? Do you have visibility of what's going on when you're at home? So, I remember we were in a conference somewhere, and there was a software tool we presented which said, oh, you can monitor your factory from the beach, and it became a standing joke that you could see what's happening from wherever you are. So can you do that? And if you cannot, why not? What's missing? What can your supplier, or what can your tools can you be add to your shop floor that helps you get that visibility, and thereby helps you analyze? And then once you get the visibility, what do you do with that data? You analyze it, you see, am I able to make any sense of it? Is it of any value to me? Because sometimes you got to be careful. Don't just do it for the sake of it. Sometimes the data might just not be, it has to make sense to you. That's number one. Another thing is, you also should not rush to buy a software, buy tools just because everybody has solutions. You got to figure out what works for your factory. So maybe try to simulate it manually. Do it manually first. Do it on paper. Do a good blueprint that you can see clearly. You understand clearly why you do each part of it. And then it becomes easy to explain to your supplier, whoever's providing you a tool, what you want to achieve. Because a big part of for us as suppliers of solutions is to understand the problem local to the customer. And then I would say once you do that, you can evaluate whether the solution that's being presented can really meet your needs or not, because you understand your problem very well. So, and of course, things go with it. I mean, what we talked about, having integration and being able to not have, kind of open systems, be able to talk to each other. These are all critical things, but I think they come after. But these two are critical. And of course, when you start off with any transformation change, you want to involve your team. With bigger projects, we always look for the person beyond the one who's just signing the check to buy it. Who was your other champions on the shop floor? Who can help us implement it? Because there's only so much you can do when you deliver it. The person installing it, setting it up, and training is gone. It's a journey after we install the software or the machine that helps you get to where you want to be. So who are your champions in your shop floor who are going to be a part of this journey with you? Yeah.
Sure, certainly bringing in a broader team and layers in that team is certainly important in terms of change management, right? And there's a lot of people have different experiences. People may be using Gen AI at home in ways they have no idea, and they've actually developed knowledge and expertise. We have somebody here who's actually spending a significant portion of his weekends is almost building like his own master's degree on Gen AI every weekend, and this is something that he's learning a lot from. So you never know where people are at with that. Fred, do you want to add in from your perspective?
Yeah.
Where do we begin?
Where do we begin? I think I'm going to look personally, like, where did I kind of begin? And like some of us here, Gen Xers, I grew up programming in BASIC on a Sinclair ZX81, right? Copying programs from magazines. So I don't say that I'm a coder, but I was a PLC programmer, etc. So we all kind of understand logic. I think there needs to be some basic understanding within your facility of what your capabilities could be, right? How to ask this question. It's like when Google appeared, we all had to learn how to Google. I think now we all have to know how to write AI prompts and get what we want out of it. But you also need to know what it's delivering and that what it's delivering is correct. Jeff had a good point this morning that language models are not very good at math. But what some of the AI is doing today is very good, is generating code. And this, I think, Fryas is going to certainly hit on the cybersecurity side of these things. If I can code and build my own in-house applications, I'm not having to push my data or my information or sensitive information to a cloud AI or have something done off-site. I can keep all of my data internally. Some examples of that, let's see, just some practical examples that I've done kind of lately. If I bring in a 3D model into CAM, I can see its metadata information. I can see its material type and its material thickness, for example. I can do that by going File, Import, looking through Windows Explorer, picking the part, in it comes, looking at a screen on the right that gives me that. With an API and explaining the API to ChatGPT, for example, I can generate a very short piece of code with a C# console app, to Karthik's point. I don't need a fancy UI. This is just a tool that will do something. That will automate that process. Like Karthik said earlier, you write down what you want to do manually, or you do the steps manually, and you automate those steps. And within a short piece of code, I can rip through thousands of models, import them, unfold them, tell me what the information is, stick that in a text file that comes to Excel that's sorted by material type and thickness, and maybe maximum, minimum sizes and other information can come. And like Lance was saying earlier, you're starting then to build your automated clothing facility, right? Part's too big, it's too thick for the panel bender, it's too thin for some other machine, or it's not going to go on a punch press, it's going to go on the laser. Now you're making kind of business decisions by doing a very quick or fast 10,000-foot analysis. I think the AI can be used as a tool to build tools, is what I'm personally using it for a lot. And then trying to keep that data local. We're certainly not giving customer information to a cloud, but I'm having it do the work or do the churning. I like to go off and have a coffee while it's doing it. I don't want to I'm not going to sit on a beach and see if my machine is running. I'm going to sit on the beach and sit on the beach. But I do want to be able to step away and have those processes automated. That said, championing from the ground up is a very important point. When you can sit and show a CAM operator that all of their manual processes that's taking 8 hours a day, we digitize that and we connect the systems and we write some sort of intermediary code that does the translations for the dates don't jive from this software to that software, the format doesn't match. You can cut their 8-hour day down to 1 hour. This is easily done. But it takes sitting there and really understanding what's happening and what can I do.
So let me maybe drill a little bit into that.
Mm.
From clearly the least technologically competent person on this call. I love the example, right? I get the concept of saying, hey, we've got metadata from a customer who, and I loved earlier, Fred, when you said something about how we maybe have to clean up CAD files. Like,
oh yeah,
our customers don't give us perfect data either. Wow, okay.
No.
So I get that, and I know we have engineers. I've actually been an engineer at one point in my life, programming myself, so I have a little bit of knowledge, not from a coding perspective, not from like an IT programming, but from programming. Amada is actually in some other equipment, but as a practical, but I still don't understand half of what you just said. And what I mean by that is, like, when you say who would build that tool. So I get the concept of customer supplying data, and you got to drill into it to, and with current technology, we can build a tool that will drill into multiple drawings or CAD files or CAM files or incoming data.
Where do you start?
Where do you, who builds it? Do I have to go to some Fiverr.com or whatever website that says, hey, I got to hire somebody who can actually code, because I can't code anything. So when you say we can build something, can we go a step level deeper in that? Who builds?
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's a very good question, Colin. That came up in my sessions in FabTech, right? Where do I start? And I say, first off, are you interested? Are you curious? I didn't fire up Visual Studio until about 4 years ago, okay, which is where you build your applications. I bought a book, head first into C#, and I picked a language. And some people it'll be Java, some it'll be VBS, whatever. But I just said, I'm going to pick a language. I'm going to learn how to write a little application to do these tasks for me. And next thing you know, I'm building WPF applications, which have buttons and graphs and tables. And I'm writing custom little pieces of software that are just automating the stupid stuff I was doing all day long. I'll get 1,000 drawings from a customer, Colin, and I'm going through Windows Explorer, looking at the preview screen as I hit the down arrow, going, no. And I'm looking at what's going on in my brain that says yes, and what's going on in my brain that says no. And it's the size of the part or the thickness that I see in the preview. Mm-hmm. So I write a small, again, I'm going to chat and say, hey, I've got this API. Here's the information of how the API works. I'm going to write a small C# application that goes through the folder, looks for this, and then you find you can, because you've read the book, you kind of understand a little bit about file manipulation and writing to databases and writing to text files and reading from dictionaries, etc. So there's that mechanism that you kind of need to understand how that machine works. And next thing you know, I'm ripping through 1,000 files. I'm not looking at any of them. All the problem children are dumped in a folder called problem children, and those are the ones I look at, right?
Yeah.
So you work on the diminishing return. I really think, there was an eye opener for me. I did one with Autodesk Inventor, for example, where I wanted to read from a spreadsheet that made parametric parts, and it wouldn't work. And I realized it was using integers instead of doubles. So I wasn't getting my decimalized versions of the parts. I was getting a 1-inch part and a 5-inch part and a 7-inch part. I wasn't getting the 5.138 because the ChatGPT wasn't smart enough to say, hey, you said inch increments and that's integers. So there's little logical elements that you would need to have some understanding of. Now, here's where the kids come in. We're all teaching the kids to code. There's Scratch. There's a website by MIT where kids can build object-based code and programming and make little games. What are they learning? They're learning if, for, then, else statements and loops and integers and booleans and what those are and doubles. And this becomes, it's the language. really for me, then it was getting AI to be the tool that generates that work. I don't want to spend all of my time being a coder. And I don't want to have to go to a developer and ask him for something and it comes back to saying, well, can you change this? And then it goes back and it's too long a process. I think AI has allowed people to get exactly what they want, when they want, very quickly, even if it's down and dirty, but it's making people very productive. And it's recognition of where or how I can apply that tool has kind of been interesting these days. So I think Colin, I would say buy the book and
So,
maybe dig a little bit, you know?
If I was to, and I know this is a little bit of an impossible question, but you know, sometimes that's what I do. How long does that take? I mean, and again, you know, what's your starting point, right? But as somebody who's never programmed anything again beyond you know, I mean, G code basically.
Yeah.
If it's 11:19 today, is it reasonable to say that by the end of the first quarter, if I spent an hour or two a week with that book, maybe 3-4 hours a week with the book, with thinking about the applications, like could I put myself in the first quarter in a position to start maybe applying some of the
Totally
ideas?
Totally,
Yeah?
I would say, yeah. I mean, the book's about this thick, right? So it's head first into C# by Riley, and I'm not advertising that, you know, but it's an example of what I use, and there's other books, etc. But you take a chapter a week, right? And there's applications, and you're going to fire up Unity, and you're going to make a little game, and you're going to understand logic, and you're going to understand data types, and then you can look at, okay, I've got all of this. Now I go and I see my nice Trump laser or my Amada press brake or my Prima panel bender. And you start digging and you start saying, what have you got for me? Right. And where can I get information from you? And then how can I push information to you? You do that with your ERP system. You look into your CAD system. You look at SolidWorks, Autodesk Inventor, Creo, etc. Then you start getting curious about building plugins, right? And how can I write a plugin so that when I open up my Autodesk Inventor model, it fires up my CAM software in the background to unfold it, tool it, save it. And something else is looking for the order file from that ERP that says nest 50 of them for that customer over there, right? And it'll come.
Okay. So we have, I think,
maybe I can add one thing.
Yeah, please, yes.
Colin, and I think what, you know, appreciate what Fred said, and it might, you know, picking up a C# book, maybe once people look at it, it might turn off, you know, some of our the attendees of this panel discussion. But like you said, you should be ready. Are you ready to take it on? I think that you said it well, Fred. That are you ready to take on this and do it? But I'd probably like to add that today, what's happening with AI is also you don't need to even maybe go through that C# book. If you could, if you're ready to, like as Fred said, but it's getting so simple that you should be willing to, of course, spend the time to understand, define what you need, and there can be software written for you. There's something called vibe coding, which is gaining popularity. So if you don't know what it is, just go and watch a YouTube video on it. It's basically you're chatting with an AI engine, telling it, make me a website for my shoe sales company, and it makes a website. Okay, make me a border on the left hand side so I can, you know, choose between basketball shoes and running shoes, and it'll do that. So it's literally talking. But the key thing is you're going to have to go through that process of trying and learning. Either you or somebody in your company is going to have to become your champion to understand these tools, because it's not perfect. I think somebody said earlier, I think Jeff said in his presentation, where even simple addition can be wrong from AI, but it's not perfect. But it's as simple as stating what you want and is what you're going to get. But eventually it will get there. The importance is to jump on the train, start exploring, start learning, and it's not going to solve all your problems overnight. Don't get that, but it's going to give you a perspective as you decide. You may ultimately buy something from somebody who's professionally packaged into a product, but it gives you that much more insight into understanding it.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway for this is you have to understand your pain points and define a strategy to actually develop or or deploy these tools. And remember that even small targeted improvements can make a big difference and build momentum to the broader digital transformation.
I think I told a few of you before, I actually just took a certificate course in AI strategies for business, because I felt like I had to jump in and learn something, and by taking a course kind of forced myself to do it. And two sort of overarching strategies that they talked about were from an AI, and specifically AI rather than digital transformation broadly, it was just an AI focused, is that one, whatever your strategy, it absolutely should be aligned with what your business strategy is. You should have your business strategy first, and then make sure your AI strategy is aligned with that. And then the second sort of maybe major takeaway was, when we're talking about the current and future of AI, and specifically Gen AI tools, but also machine learning and all that, it's the combo deal. It's the person plus the computer. It's not, and yes, there will be winners and losers in the grand scheme of things, but when we look at the application, it's really, it's the combos where you're going to get the greatest resolution and power and effectiveness and application and efficacy of what you're trying to do. All of that's going to be from the expertise that you have and the people, along with these augmented tools. Do those two things, again, the strategy alignment and the computer plus person, do those all make sense to you guys? Would you quibble with those, or are those kind of good things to think about as the leaders on the call here are thinking about where do they go next? I mean, any one of you can jump in on that.
Yeah, very quickly. I think it's a combination. There's always going to be some human interaction. I think eventually, yeah, we're very early days on this whole thing. Sure enough, the language model doesn't get mapped right now, but it will in the future. Coding may not exist for us in the future, like Jensen Huang, NVIDIA is saying. You're going to be asking it to do something, and it will just do the thing for you. The important point, I think, is for us, especially is the security of that. Because what can I develop that's in my own environments that I have control over versus what's being transferred somewhere else off-site. But I think even the future, like, people don't go to websites as much as they used to anymore. It's more apps. People are not going to go to apps anymore because they're just going to say, do the thing I need, right? And that's going to happen. It's knowing what's out there that can happen. That's where the curiosity comes in. You need, even if it's not you as a factory owner, identify that person in your plant who's curious and interested and wants to grow. And maybe it's a press break operator and says, hey, by the way, I code on the weekends, I do things. Okay, this is interesting now. What tools can you provide that person to develop what they're doing on a daily basis?
And to piggyback on what you're saying there, when you're talking about internal coding and making things an edge device and keeping it all internal, you really have to start considering if you're, say, government adjacent or you actually do work with the DoD, you have to start to think about regulatory compliance and auditability. So you want to look at things as the CMMC and the NIST standards in order to guide you on how to build these things in order to protect your data, their data, overall your company. Because right now, there really isn't a strong regulation on AI. I mean, if you go by the CMMC standards, level 2, if you're trying to just reach that, they're still only using, revision 2, and we're revision 3 and above. So I see in the future, once regulations actually catch up with it, you have to have a strong foundation in place in order not to be caught out with the changes they're inevitably going to make on what's required. And that's something else that it kind of throws a wrench into developing it internally versus going with, say, a third party that's already professional at this, where you don't have that breakdown, or I should say that cloud overhead. Pun very much intended.
Nice pun there right at the end. I appreciate you slipping that one in. We definitely did not yet. One thing I want to, if we have a couple more minutes, one thing I did want to come back to, because I think it might be interesting to the audience, is there's a company you mentioned earlier. I was going back to my notes here. Two different parts. I think Fred, you mentioned one. I think Kartik, you mentioned another. I think actually all three of you, I think, in different ways. the idea of helping the younger workforce come into manufacturing and recognize manufacturing as a place where we are absolutely not the dirty, dingy, whatever, the 3Ds, that's not what we're doing, even dangerous. We are doing complex things. We're doing interesting things with technology. We have been for decades. We all know that internally, but to the external workforce, and along with that, there was the knowledge, it's sort of intergenerational knowledge transfer, and the capability that the tools, the technology tools we have today can promote that. I just wonder if you want to expand on that idea of the labor component of it. I know of a business in Minnesota, a PMA member, who some of the applications they've done with automation is not about replacing workers. It's about augmenting their workforce and making sure they can serve their customers. And sort of it's so that labor piece of it, the transfer of knowledge piece of it. If you can expand on those, because I think that's something we're all kind of struggling with a bit.
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier the shop rat knowledge, right? So let's say you're a journeyman press brake operator, knows where the bodies are buried on that machine and knows its nuances, etc. Right? We've still got customers out there running 20, 30-year-old machines. How do we get that knowledge? We've got to take that or enhance that into the next generation. It's a problem. Not happening a lot today, where younger people are being watched over by journeymen, for example, or experienced. I think there's evidence of this in, say, robotic surgery today, okay, where it's all remote and there's nobody really there watching over the shoulder, or they're not watching over a master's shoulder because they're just watching a screen. They don't see the nuances of what's happening around them or about them. I would say, who knows anymore to put a sieve of paper underneath a V-die anymore, right? This sort of thing that makes little adjustments. Young people, I think they're certainly not attracted to come into factories anymore unless we have high technology equipment and machinery that kind of takes care of that. I think as machine builder, it's important for us to get that knowledge that we've had over the decades with journeyman people, to get that into the machine so that they become smarter and can help you make better decisions in terms of quality, angle correction, and all of that. We're all doing these things. Feedback from the machine. And I think we used to joke about 15 years ago that if I could run a laser with an Xbox controller, they'd be flooding in the doors. It's got to be something cool and interesting and evoke the curiosity of younger people, or I think there's going to be a real problem here. It's going to be heavy on automation in the future.
Yeah, I mean, maybe picking up on that automation, like you said, so robots, right? That's one cool thing. For example, if you can, you bring in robotics into your shop, that's already an attractive way that an employee doesn't sit on the floor and run a press brake, but he's more into programming and setting up a robot that can do the work for him. There's an ease associated with it. There's software associated with it. So I think investing in these next generation tools and solutions and software that make it attractive, and move from a traditional, I need strength and my hands to work on the floor, but really I need to run systems that actually do this for me, would be a mindset that you got to sell to your employee base. And that being said, also with AI, one of the biggest focuses of the Silicon Valley and AI companies is to solve problems in manufacturing, because suddenly we are able to use vision and perception and software and marry them together and do things. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, you didn't think a car could drive itself. Today, it is. And that's a heavily mechanical vehicle that's on the road driving today. It's a reality. So if we can do that on the road, drive down I-90 at 70 miles an hour without a driver, why can't you drive in your shop floor or move material from one place to another, which doesn't change? The people are not new. So it's coming. I think that's it. The focus on using AI in automation is huge. And some of this is going to be, it's not necessarily one supplier, or it's going to be integration of systems, vision, robotics, software that tie in to ultimately work with sheet metal, which is what our people on this forum know, and the guys in Silicon Valley don't understand sheet metal, and that's where but they want to use their AI knowledge. They're the ones who own these data centers. They're the ones who own these LLMs to translate that into applications that can solve these problems. So I see it very bright and interesting for the future for manufacturing, simply because it's going to be this intersection of these new, rapidly growing industry around AI and our pre-existing manufacturing, because ultimately you got to make a part, a real physical part. You can't, it's not software. You got to ship that refrigerator door or that kitchen or that or the electrical panel. That hasn't changed yet. Maybe it'll happen in the future. I don't know, but for now it hasn't. So that's my comment.
Being that AI isn't about replacing people, effectively, it's about giving operators and engineers superpowers, if you will. So less guesswork, less downtime, more consistent results. The example of the press brakes that you brought up, Colin, it's actually, you like read my mind here in terms of vision systems as well as AR, augmented reality. Combining those two within press brakes to allow an operator or someone who doesn't even know what a press brake is to walk up to it with a flat, effectively gamify it. You have an HMI on the brake bed itself, guiding them of how to actually bend this part. All of that knowledge has already been transferred from like your legacy operator, if you will. So now there is no guesswork. It's quite literally making it a game where they just line up the edges, line up the dots. It tells you if you're wrong. It can bend. They're wearing a Bluetooth headset, and they can say, okay, well, this is out 3 degrees, and the machine will figure it out. And that's actually a solution that's being implemented now. I've seen that with press brakes that we have right here on our shop floor, or I should say our showroom floor. So that's where I see AI going broadly, where you can bring anyone off the street. Doesn't matter if they worked in manufacturing or not. They can walk up to a machine and say, hey, I want this part, press a button, and out pops a part. Effectively, we're trying to take AI machine learning and turn these machines into vending machines effectively.
I mean, there's been so much here that's kind of mind blowing, and I really appreciate Fred and Brace and Kartik for bringing your knowledge and your capability to this topic. It's pretty big. It's substantial. A lot of us that are running shops out here are just trying to figure out what do we do, where do we begin, what's the business case, how does it apply to us, and oh, by the way, what's my competitor down the street doing? Because I'm sure they're smarter than me figuring this thing out. And what you guys bring to the table here is a lot of really good knowledge, a lot of applications. So I appreciate the insights, appreciate the extra few minutes here, going overtime, taken away from Brad's time. So, again, thank you guys for your insight, and thanks for PMA for you setting up this panel in particular, but the overall summit here. Appreciate that from PMA. So I think it's back to you, Brad.
Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you to our panelists, Kartik, Brace, and Fred, and Colin, of course. Thank you so much for facilitating today's conversation. That was really, I think you guys could have gone on and on for a little bit longer. And then again, I do want to thank Jeff and his panelists, and Jeff for his keynote, and the audience, of course, as well. Thank you for attending the program today. We hope everyone found it to be useful and valuable, and we do hope you'll all join us tomorrow for our third and final session with panels on workforce development in preparation for the digital workplace of the future. And then we'll have a panel discussion on growing your customer base as metal formers and fabricators are continuing to transition to a high, more of a high mix short run work schedule. Also, to remind everyone, an archive of today's program will be available up on our website very soon, within the next day or two. So you'll get an email with a link to that archived program, so you can watch it on demand and share it with others in the company. So again, we hope to see you all tomorrow. You can close your browsers, and I wish everyone a great afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Kartik and Bryce. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Thanks, Brad. Bye-bye.